Alright, welcome back to We Play Games. I'm Walker, and here we are about to do a basic country guide for Argentina in our Vicky 3 Academy series, and we're trying to do our best to help straighten this name out, because oh boy, that border war. Argentina in 1836, it's a very, very weird start here in Victoria 3. You have a presidential dictatorship, and that's meant to represent the presidential dictatorship of Juan Manuel de Rosas. This guy, he's a federalist, which is basically a conservative-aligned, decentralized movement inside of Argentina, and there's basically a war of warlords going on inside of Argentina in real life in 1836 at this point. And Juan Manuel de Rosas is going to come up in power in the province of Buenos Aires, and he's going to expand his influence over Argentina, lead the desert war against the indigenous peoples living down here. It is a brutal presidential dictatorship that he sets up, and so he's a very complicated figure in Argentinian history because he was very powerful when it came to expanding Argentinian influence. Argentina did briefly control all of Uruguay, and hopefully we can make it less brief here in Victoria 3. So one thing that's really important before we dive into anything else here is making sure that Great Britain is cooperative towards you at a minimum. If they aren't cooperative towards you, the chances are very good they're going to intervene when you try to annex Uruguay. And so my recommendation is just try to annex Uruguay and Santiago like as soon as possible, and if the UK intervenes in those fights and you have to restart, then you lost 15 minutes, not, like 6 hours. Now, that said, we're not going to be like part of the British market, because I think another really strong thing that you can do as Argentina once you've cleared your immediate neighbors is, of course, take the Falklands. And because of the way the AI is currently working in 1.1.2, if you can just get like a small second general and just send it to the Falklands or whatever and leave your president at home to defend, you can probably take the Falklands without too much of an issue. But you want to do that after you don't need the UK to intervene anymore. So I would not recommend starting with a Falkland War. In terms of your government here, you do have a presidential dictatorship. This is sort of like a monarchy, except that there's no heir. Your president can still serve as a general, which, given that he's going to be starting as an ambitious colonial administrator all of the time, that's pretty useful. But when he dies, we get the leader of the interest group with the most clout as our new presidential dictator. And so be aware that means that you have a lot of control over who's in charge. And I'm going to recommend actually you bring the landowners in, bolster them, because all we're really trying to do here is set up corn laws. Corn laws is going to be the really useful thing here, because corn laws, for those of you who do not know how these things work, corn laws is going to allow us to dramatically increase the happiness of the landowner, and it's going to allow us to dramatically increase the happiness of the landowner while doing things that aren't even really good for it. So we're going to be switching into laissez-faire, and we'll be switching into free trade. We're also going to go ahead and just mobilize our general, activate all of our conscripts. I just want to get this fight with Uruguay done without anybody intervening. But in terms of our starting laws as Argentina, we don't even start with like particularly heinous laws. We have legacy slavery and migration controls are probably the most offensive things here. Autocracy is usually not very good, but because of the unique things here as Argentina, specifically the Caudillismo, shared ideology between the landowners and the armed forces. That shared ideology means that you have a government that's a little more like a shogunate bakufu feel to it. And so be aware that is a pull. And so it's a little easier to create a combined armed forces landowner government than it would be with other people. Here we happen to have a jingoist, but it's not necessary, I promise. As long as it isn't a pacifist, it's almost impossible to have an armed forces over here who's going to disagree with your landowner so much that you can't have a reasonable amount of legitimacy, and that's all you need in order to make use of your corn laws. That, and of course serfdom abolished, which you do have, and then you switch into laissez-faire, and of course one of the things we are going to want to pick up as Argentina is free trade, because as one of these small nations, all you need to be worried about is getting resources as inexpensively as possible, and one of the cheapest ways to get resources in the game right now is to just trade for them, especially if it's going to be things that are not going to be relatively hotly contested. Moving out of our politics and into our budget, we are going to be running level 5 taxes. We're going to be running consumption taxes on tobacco, and then high wages. That's going to afford us just enough authority to run a whole bunch of of decrees all over the place, and also give us enough bureaucracy to be able to incorporate Uruguay sooner rather than later. Now, you would be naturally inclined when it comes to your budget to want to expand your gold mines, but at the moment, A, you do not control your tool industry. It is currently under foreign occupation in Chile, in their capital Santiago, so you're going to have to go liberate it. But B, Tucumán currently is unincorporated. Its population is also very small. We don't have access to rail. It has an infrastructure penalty from the Andes. It has a state construction efficiency penalty in the Andes, etc., etc. Tucumán is actually, I think, largely a trap at the beginning of the game. I think there's too many resources that you need in order to develop this state at the moment. And if you want more gold, just go get it. It's right here. There's a bunch of government administration too. There's iron. There's some ports. Awesome. This is like everything a boy could ever wish for is right there in Santiago. And so after you take Uruguay, which should be something that you just like push to see if the British will fold or not, then you need to consider if you can just attack Chile right away. Like, if they won't have any great power backing them, then the chances are very good that this is a time to strike. Add as a separate war goal war reps on Chile, but don't add anything else, because once you've weakened Chile by taking Santiago, it'll be really easy for you to come back and mop them up. But if you leave them with Los Rios, they will continue to colonize for you, which, considering how slow your colonization is going to be going at the beginning of the game, that's a really big bonus. Take Santiago, take the world. So one thing that sort of put me over the top to attack them rather than wait for mobile artillery is I noticed that their barracks are actually running irregular infantry rather than line infantry. And so we're fighting with line infantry and cannon artillery against irregulars cannons. We should mop the floor with them, especially because their flotillas are actually smaller than ours. So we could even recruit another general here in La Plata. In this case, I guess we'll pick up an intelligentsia pacifist. We have a larger fleet than they do. It's an experienced naval commander. Bonus that we get, plus 20% offense defense is huge. Plus our navy's bigger. So how this is going to go down is either Chile is going to back down. Oh, we got a modern conservative. Excellent. So this is the real bonus for getting into corn laws, is switching into laissez-faire, but we're also going to want to switch into free trade. But yeah, our military commanders are just higher quality than Chile's. Our leader, Juan Manuel, will push through the Andes, and meanwhile our other commander is going to be slipping through their naval net and just trying to land here in Los Rios, because we do want to capitulate them, because we're going to start building up some pretty serious amount of debt, and because our economy is so small and there's so few buildings in our country, we don't have a giant credit pool. Our fleet is just going to smash theirs, and then we just push right on through. Chile is at minus 12 war exhaustion. All right, there we go. So now we've taken Santiago, we should go ahead, we should incorporate it. We'll also switch our tools over to using iron, because we do have an iron mine here. And of course we are also going to want to add a resource extraction here in Santiago itself, as well as, for that matter, this is a population 656,000. This is going to be one of our main thoroughfares, maybe even a capital over here. And so we need to get this developed. Fortunately, we have just like a bunch of more or less wasted authority out here. Cordoba only has a population of 173. Like, whether or not it's anyone can read there is a lot less important than whether or not anybody can read in Santiago. And now we can do resource industry in Santiago, which is also going to increase the productivity in our gold mines here. Now, there is a lot of turmoil and devastation and stuff, but as we incorporate it, that will go down. So with Argentina in control of Santiago and Uruguay, don't be afraid to start making friends. Like in this case, we're going to start importing wood from Russia. You can, as Argentina, seriously consider becoming a protectorate. Becoming a protectorate means sacrificing control of your corn laws journal entry, and so you do not want to do that before you get your market liberal. But once you do, once you do, stop bolstering them, Dedoy, and that'll also get you back a whole bunch of authority for developing Santiago, including probably putting a road maintenance there, because you are going to be building some. Now, of course, with our own control over the tools industry in Santiago, we can go ahead and push tools out to more people. So we get Napoleonic warfare as our first technology, and then it turns out we were actually getting tech spread on stock exchange, so we're just going to go ahead and push into that. If we switched into mobile artillery, it would be another minus 583. All right, and now we've got a stock exchange on the books, which is going to liberate a lot of bureaucracy for us, which will allow us to incorporate Uruguay, as well as set up a new import for artillery if we want one. Because I'm seriously considering starting the Falklands War 150 years early. We'll leave our conscription centers on cannon artillery. Normally, I would say we can wait for banking to come through us through tech spread, but in this case, because we have so much of our territory has gold, I think minting techs are pretty useful, and this one is only 23 months to learn, so we'll pick that one up as well, which is also going to be helpful because we're going to be working with some interest here. Alright, so Piratini and Graupera actually were able to defeat Brazil in this case, and while I would like to start gobbling those up, I think we need to do something very specific right here. I think we need to go ahead and take the Falklands. 6.5 infamy to potentially take control of the Falklands as well as war reps from the UK is absolutely going to be worth it here. We're going to mobilize all generals, we're going to activate all conscripts, and we'll start a new import of French artillery as well as French small arms. But this is a relatively high risk for us because we're potentially going to blow through our credit limit, which is a little scary. But all we're planning on doing here is sending our secondary commander down and leaving our main commander on standby to potentially fend off any sort of British incursions and just defend. Because if we can just take control of this and then potentially even just drop our second general kind of just like on random places in the British Empire, we can get ticking war score a lot faster than they can. Battle in the coast of St. Helena. Are we gonna break through? Are we gonna break through? Yeah. All right, good. We control 100% of our war goals, so now it just becomes a question of, is there anywhere else we want to naval invade? I'm not too beaten up about missing out on a treaty port from the UK, because if you can reliably use them as bank, that would be really helpful for your economy, because you need cash more than anything else in the entire world. Now we're really just in a race against our budget. Absolutely take on our national debt. France, thank you. They are protective. They may force us into becoming a protectorate, but I'm not really afraid of becoming a protectorate of France long term, because we can always break free. So if you are going to be going for an approach where you want to attack Great Britain early as Argentina, then my recommendation is to make sure that you also have a relatively friendly France, because France, as a rival of the UK, is going to be really interested in buying your debt. They've already bought it once, which is, like, I think literally going to be the only reason we'll win this war, because otherwise we would have run up into default. But as it stands, their war score is ticking down way faster than ours, and once we've defeated the UK, then we will have much more than enough money to add a construction sector or two, and possibly even start gobbling up the pieces of Brazil. And so that's another really useful way for you to grow your economy as Argentina, is to just take stuff from people and say, this is mine now. And we are also going to go into mechanical tools here for sure, because we want to make sure that we can set up a sulfur mine pretty soon and make good use out of the fact that down here, there's a lot of sulfur. And of course, there's tons of gold. Taking the Falklands away from the UK does have the mixed disadvantage that they aren't going to have an interest there, so they can't just like randomly start colonizing down here anymore. But it also means that if you had any trade with the UK, they no longer have an interest down there. And so it's a tough balancing act. You do need to decide what ultimately is best for you. But I think generally speaking, you want to push the UK, and this is a really easy way for you to get tons of money. Yeah, look at that. Boom. We have bounced up to plus 27.6k. You don't even really need mobile artillery in order to attack the UK like this, as long as you're not afraid of them landing and overthrowing your country via naval invasion, which just requires leaving a big stack at home. So from there, as Argentina, I do think that now that we've picked up the tech, we should switch into free trade, because free trade will allow us to just dramatically transform bureaucracy and convoys into anything else. We already have some movement in a paper industry here, and so we're starting to feed our government administration up. We do probably need to move into a school sooner rather than later, so that way we can ensure that our bureaucracy has somewhere to go other than just trade. But trade is going to be really neat, because keep in mind that you will be able to become a pretty big wine producer if you want as Argentina, thanks to this Pampas modifier, so plus 15% agriculture throughput is pretty strong if you're dealing with wheat farms running wine. And so don't be afraid to utilize that, but do be aware that I still strongly recommend that everybody try to avoid developing any agricultural buildings for the beginning of the game, at least until you get to the point where you no longer care about giving aristocrats high-paying jobs. Once you get to that point, then you're fine. But yeah, with war reps in hand, we can kind of do whatever we want to. If you want to do even more war reps, you could attack France or someone, but France in this case did bail us out by buying our debt, so I'm not in the mood to attack France anytime soon. But yeah, that's our basic country guide is Argentina here on We Play Games. I'm Walker. Take care.